After 14 years of unrest and unhappiness at St James's Park, Newcastle United fans have spent the last week celebrating both the departure of Mike Ashley and the potentially glittering future under the wealthiest ownership group in world football. Newcastle don't play until tomorrow, but from a purely footballing perspective, this is a defining moment in the English game. And for the Geordies, a giant step closer to a return to the success of a century ago. A sleeping giant has just been woken up. It is a massive story for one of English football's biggest clubs. Newcastle rose to prominence in the early to mid-20th century, winning 4 top-flight titles and 6 FA Cups, and they enjoyed success in the early days of the Premier League as well, qualifying for the Champions League 3 times. But there was a turning point, May 2007, when Mike Ashley bought the club and tough times on Tyneside followed. Under Ashley, they were relegated from the Premier League twice and finished higher than 10th just once. Fans protested against the owner, and in October 2017, he put the club up for sale. In April 2020, a consortium reportedly agreed a deal to buy Newcastle. But just a few months later, the deal appeared to fall apart when they withdrew their interest, citing the prolonged process and global uncertainty. But last week, the deal finally went through, as Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, as well as 2 international firms with a presence in England, officially completed the takeover for a reported fee of over $400 million. Good morning. Now, while the news has pleased many Newcastle supporters from a footballing perspective, the takeover has also come under criticism due to the human rights concerns about Saudi Arabia. The chairman of the Public Investment Fund, which acquired an 80% stake in the club, is Mohammed bin Salman. Bin Salman is also the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the country's de facto ruler. The US government has said human rights issues in Saudi Arabia include unlawful killings and executions for non-violent offences. In February, a US intelligence report stated that bin Salman approved the killing of US-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Turkey in 2018. All of this has raised concerns, partly due to bin Salman's role with Saudi Arabia itself and its public investment fund. In its statement confirming the deal, the Premier League outlined the central aspect as to why the takeover was able to be completed. They said they've, quote, received legally binding assurances that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will not control Newcastle United Football Club. All parties are pleased to have concluded this process, which gives certainty and clarity to Newcastle and their fans. Well, those assurances cleared the way for the takeover. And if those legally bound assurances are not upheld, the Premier League has the right to disqualify the new owners. Well, joining me here this morning to discuss this, first and foremost, before we get to Watford against Liverpool, Tim Howard and Robbie Earle. Robbie, I'll start with you. Your reaction to the takeover finally going through?
Slightly conflicted by the news, Rebecca, and it's all to do with separation. First of all, it's difficult to separate the football side of this conversation, and that's, you know, how great Newcastle can be and will be with this takeover, but also about the human rights and discrimination conversation that you feel has to go along with it. As well as that, the separation for me between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Public Investment Fund. I know they've given assurances that the Premier League say they're 2 separate entities, but I'm not sure how we can ensure that the Saudi state is not influencing the football club. I
think that's the problem, isn't it, Tim? It's that separation. We have to believe it, but it's hard.
Well, we have to believe it. It's just hard to decipher where that separation comes in because of how powerful the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has shown to be in relation to PIF. So the Premier League has assurances. They have processes in place that if those aren't met, then they can disqualify them. So we have to trust that.
Let's put the reservations to one side for a second and talk about this from a footballing perspective. This reminds us all, I think, of when Abramovich came into Chelsea, of when Mansour came into Manchester City. But this is almost a whole nother level. We are led to believe, as a club now, richer than the other 19 Premier League clubs put together, Tim. And this is happening to Newcastle United. Talk to us about your reaction to it being Newcastle.
Well, you said it was a sleeping giant. Newcastle Football Club is brilliant. Love to play there. Brilliant fans. It sits up on, it's like a castle on a hill. This isn't Man City, though, because when Man City was taken over, it was a yo-yo club. It had a ground that was just kind of in tatters and they needed a new building. This is ready-made. I mean, look out Arsenal, Tottenham, Manchester United, Liverpool. The spending that's going to go on here at this rich, traditional club, I think is going to be massive for the Premier League. I think it's going to catapult them straight away into the conversation in terms of European spots, in terms of Champions League, which is exactly where they deserve to be. It won't take very long. Maybe they'll get a few things wrong along the way, which is natural. But the money that's going to go into this football club, we're going to see the best players and the best managers in the world go through those doors.
How do you see it affecting the Premier League?
Changes the landscape of the Premier League as we know it. It's a game changer, Rebecca. And I say that it's so big that what this football club capacity can do. And when you look at teams in this league, there's a big six at the moment, traditional big six. Forget that. From today, there's a traditional big seven. And that's funny to say that a team that's second bottom from the league. But over a period of time, this club will be in the top four. This club will be winning Premier League titles. That's how big this news is.
January 1st, transfer window opens. Are we going to see splashing the cash immediately, do you think?
I think people will come in, but I think it's also important about... The money's important, but the leadership of this football club, the people in place, the technical director, finding the right manager, them finding the right players. There's a process that's involved. So throwing money at it to make sure they stay in the league, I think is the first priority. But over the course of time, consistently growing the player base and who's running the football club is going to be important.
When Abramovich came into Chelsea, they had virtual instant success because at that time there were no other billionaires in the Premier League. And now, of course, they've got Chelsea, they've got Man City, who are already rich with their owners. Do you think that a title will come relatively quickly?
Yeah, I certainly think it'll come over the next 5, 6, 7 years, you know, and that's quick in terms of where they are right now. Look, we've seen the downfalls with QPR. You pump all the money in, and money doesn't just buy you success. It helps. But as Robbie said there, the structure has to be in place from the top. The footballing decisions have to be right. And then once the money comes in, sky's the limit for Newcastle.
Well, in amongst all the takeover talk as well has been the question of whether or not Steve Bruce will keep his job. The thought was that he wouldn't, but he will be in charge tomorrow for what is his 1,000th game as a club manager. And he was asked about the situation in his pre-match press conference yesterday.
How has everything impacted on you personally this week, Steve?
It's not about me personally. I've tried to keep me respect and me dignity, which has probably served me well over the last 20-odd years, and that'll remain. It's been difficult, of course, you know, but as I said, I hope you guys are getting a slap now from your bosses to say that you haven't done your job. Whoever your source was, whoever it was who's feeding you, didn't get it right. So I hope you're feeling a bit of heat.
Well, they didn't get it right yet because people did think that he would lose his job before the game against Tottenham tomorrow. But the thought is that he will still lose his job. Do you think that will happen?
I think he'll lose his job. Yeah, I don't think that he has any future at Newcastle Football Club. I think it's a good gesture. They've allowed him to manage, even if he's not in their plans, to manage his 1,000th game. He's a good man. He's a good footballing man. Whether he's the right manager for this job, it's okay. But he's suffered too long at Newcastle Football Club, so this feels good.
It's quite a sad situation. A man who's come from Newcastle, stood at the stadium as a child, managed his club to end like this.
Yeah, but this felt like it was coming. So at least he can feel like he has some sort of success in terms of where he's brought Newcastle Football Club and the fact that he gets his 1,000th game.
Yep, he has kept them up. He certainly has. 12th and 13th are the two finishes under Steve Bruce. There is talk of an interim manager coming in while they bide their time, the owners of Newcastle, to get the main man. Do you think that could happen?
It's interesting. I think Steve Bruce might get a little more time than people think. I agree with Tim. You can't be lucky and have 1,000 games as a manager. He's got to have some ability about him. I just think there's a lot of parties involved in the takeover. It's a complex deal. I just think they might just say, you know, leave it with Steve. It's safe enough hands for now. We know we're looking for somebody and something bigger going down the road.
So who is that person?
Oh, Rebecca, this is a big job. So, Big Sam, I'm joking. Big Stevie, I'm going to go. Big Stevie Gerrard. Knows the league, experienced, has played it in Europe. I just wonder if it's kind of a next step for somebody like a Steven Gerrard. And
he did not rule himself out when he was asked about it yesterday, the Rangers manager. Who are you giving us, Tim?
I'd love it to see Antonio Conte. Just it's a little bit too soon. I think there's going to be some bumps in the road before then.
A few other names before they get to their main man. OK, interesting stuff. Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern. And for even more content, head over to Peacock, where we've got live games, original series and a dedicated round-the-clock Premier League channel featuring studio shows, classic matches and much more.